name is Brian Egan, and welcome to Albuquerque Housing Authority Update. Today we have two guests, Mr. Andrew Stoshan and Mr. Matthew Archuleta. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be here.
So Andrew, what do you do at Albuquerque Housing Authority?
Brian, I'm the Deputy Director at the Albuquerque Housing Authority, and I've been working at the Housing Authority for 5 years now through its transition from a city department to an independent agency. And I'm happy to say there are a lot of exciting things happening at the Housing Authority these days.
What are some of your major things you work on at AHA?
Well, AHA basically has two programs as a public housing authority. Public housing program, which is the apartments we own as an agency, and those are owned by the Albuquerque Housing Authority. There are 953 apartments spread throughout the city. We also have our Housing Choice Voucher program, and that's when the Housing Authority gives a qualified household a voucher to use with a private landlord, and then the tenant only pays 30% of the rent, adjusted by their income according to HUD regulations, and AHA would subsidize the rest. So between the vouchers we have and our public housing units, we serve close to 5,000 people.
Wonderful. Now you mentioned qualified, so how does one qualify for help from Albuquerque Housing Authority?
Well, you have to be income qualified and meet the occupancy guidelines and qualification guidelines in our administrative plans or our admissions and continued occupancy policy. So you should check our website, www.abqha.org, for the various income limits and program qualification requirements. And when we are taking applications, you are welcome to apply online. AHA only uses an online application system. We don't use pen and paper anymore. So be sure to familiarize yourself with our website. And you can also fill out a contact sheet or like us on social media so you can receive regular announcements about what is going on at the agency.
And since we serve low-income clients, do we charge an application fee to apply to be admitted to one of our programs?
No, that's an excellent point, Brian. We're never going to charge an application fee, any type of side fee, or we're never going to ask for your credit card number in any way. Anybody can apply for one of our programs, and once you submit an application, when we are taking them, we'll go through it and screen it to see if you're eligible.
And you mentioned the website. Does the income change from year to year, and do we update the website to list that income level?
Yes. Well, the income limits for housing authority programs are based on the area median income as determined by HUD. So HUD will put those numbers out, and then that will generate what the income limits are for various programs. Some programs have an extremely low limit, some have a higher limit that's maybe 50% of AMI, and some go even higher than that. So there's no one-size-fits-all income qualification solution, and it's important to know what you're applying for and where your income relates as regards to the income limit.
And Matthew.
The important part of that, I just want to interject here, is that in public housing you can actually make more money and still qualify. So the Housing Choice Voucher, while that limits to the 50th percentile, public housing you could be at the 80th percentile. And once you move in, you can make more money and still qualify. You'll be paying market rent, but that gives the ability for us to serve a wide client base. So.
And Matthew, what do you do at Albuquerque Housing Authority?
I'm actually the program manager for public housing, which puts all the 953 units under my purview. I oversee maintenance. I also oversee the housing specialists, which are basically our property managers that are on all our, either on our sites or within our office.
And you mentioned public housing is different than Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers. What are some of the major differences between the two programs that Albuquerque Housing Authority operates?
The public housing units that we have are basically houses or apartments that we own, the City of Albuquerque owns, and their HUD has a subsidy on them. As Andrew mentioned, we have 953 units, and they're scattered at 26 different sites throughout the City of Albuquerque. The majority of them are in the Northeast Heights. We have some in the Southeast. We have just very few in the Northwest, but we have them all over town. The major difference is we own them, we manage them, so with the voucher, you're dealing with a market landlord. With us, we're the landlord. We're taking care of the maintenance, we're administering the lease, and we're basically doing property management on the units we own. We own them, but they really belong to the people because it's your tax dollars that have paid for these apartments. So we want to make sure that we're being good stewards of our tax dollars.
And that's because the Albuquerque Housing Authority's mission is to provide affordable housing and self-sufficiency opportunities, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. And so, you know, we move people in. It just doesn't stop there. If they have issues, we have a resource guide that we can send them to other agencies to assist them. And we also have what's called a family self-sufficiency program, where it can help them to kind of move up, to save money for education, to save money to buy a house. And our whole thing is it's really not a handout, it's a hand up for people to move in. We have a lot of young families that they start out and maybe the father or the mother is going to C&M or to UNM. You know, when they get out, they pretty much graduate from public housing and either go buy a house or go rent an apartment. So it really is a good program.
It's a transitional program in many ways.
Yes, yes it is.
And speaking of transitions, Andrew, in 2017, we're going to be making some big changes at the Housing Authority as well, right?
Absolutely. We're going through a major revision in the policies for both our public housing program and our Section 8 program. In the past, one of the most frustrating aspects of being served by the Albuquerque Housing Authority was the very long wait applicants had to endure.
This is for admission, right, to get in?
For admission, absolutely. People who would submit an application would often wait 2, 3, 4 years, sometimes even longer, depending on the circumstances they find themselves. But we really are looking at all of these policies. We're taking a look around the country at some of the best practices that some of the best programs are using, and we're bringing them home to Albuquerque. And we think the end result is going to be a much more efficient system, a much more progressive system, a much more fair system that better serves anybody who's interested in affordable housing.
And what's one of those policy changes that's coming up?
Well, the word waiting list definitely comes to mind. Right now we have a Section 8 waiting list, and the people there are waiting based on the date and time of their application and any local preference they would have. We're going to switch to a much more fair system in the months ahead. If our board approves it and our board does govern the agency, we're going to switch to a lottery system, where instead of submitting your application and waiting for 3 or 4 years, you'll submit your application during a 30-day lottery period once a year. And whether you're the first person who submits that lottery application or the last person, all the names will then be put in, and as vouchers become available, names will be drawn. So everybody gets an equal chance along those lines.
And the one, if I could just make
Sure.
a point there, is that is just going to be for the Housing Choice Vouchers, the Section 8 program, and you're down to about 600 on the wait list. So it's not like anybody's going to be left out.
Absolutely not.
Once that wait list is expired, then you'll go and implement that lottery system. And so anyone who's on that wait list now will have opportunities forthcoming. So.
And I want to make that clear. If there is anybody out there watching this today who is waiting on the Section 8 waiting list, they will be served based on the old system. Only when the waiting list is depleted will we shift to the lottery system along those lines.
So everyone that's on the waiting list still has, they'll be served first. This is to replace once we're done with the lottery, instead of reopening it instead of reopening a waiting list and creating another 5-year wait list, we'll say, okay, now we're going to do it better, faster, and cheaper.
Better, faster, and cheaper. And we're going to have what we call it's going to be customary now. It's going to be an annual ritual at the Housing Authority where you apply for the lottery every year. The lottery pool, when you put your name into the lottery, is only good for 1 year. So if you're interested the following year, you'll have to apply again and again. So it keeps information fresh, updated, consistent. It helps us find you along those lines. So I'd like to go back to if anybody is waiting on the list. If you do have a waiting list question about your name, place, maybe the number you're on, you can call our main number at 764-3920. Listen to the options. I believe select the waiting list option and follow the prompts. And if you put your information in, you'll be able to see where you are on the waiting list.
And frankly, that is an issue. Public housing has a separate waiting list, and we will remain with our waiting list and not a lottery. But it is an issue that people need to remember to update their information. When we go to pull your name and send you a letter, if you've moved, you're not going to get the letter. If you have a different phone number, you may not get the phone call. So the importance is when your application is there, please update the information, because that's critical. We have, I can say that as we're working the wait list, we have a number of people that we just can't contact. So we have to move on, and they will be removed from the wait list because we're not having that interaction. The importance is when you're on there, make sure you update that information and we won't skip a beat. We'll get you in and move forward.
So every time you change your mailing address, you need to send a written notice to the housing authority to make sure we know that you moved to another house, so that way you'll get the letter in the future saying, congratulations, you're at the top of the waiting list, we're ready to offer you a unit.
Correct. That is correct. Because we're going to send them to the old list, and yes, you can change the address, but that also expires after a certain period of time.
When you mean
So,
having the post
with
office
the
forward
post
your
office.
mail?
Yeah, when you change it to the post office, I think that's got a 6-month expiration. So you do need to make sure and change it with us. That way you're still on the list.
And it creates a delay as well. You have to wait for the mail to be forwarded through the central post office in Phoenix to your new address. And since we operate on a short timeline, we need to have your
get
current
you in.
address so it doesn't have
Correct.
to go through extra stages of processing.
Correct.
And Andrew, you mentioned changes as well in policy. What is the admissions and continued occupancy policy, the ACOP versus the administrative plan?
Well, there are two plans. Matt mentioned two programs. It's important to remember that the Housing Choice Voucher Program, previously known as Section 8, is a distinct program from public housing. So if you apply for public housing, it doesn't automatically mean you applied for Section 8. So they're two distinct programs with two distinct plans and two distinct ways to be admitted to them along those lines. We used to say two waiting lists, but we're only going to have one waiting list when the new fiscal year begins.
Just for public housing?
Just for
Correct.
public housing.
Correct.
Public housing will be a waiting list-based program. Section 8 is going to be or Housing Choice Voucher will be a lottery-based program. And there are a lot of high-performing cities and high-performing programs that have transitioned to a lottery system, and we think it's going to be a great benefit.
And our new administrative plan is modeled in what city?
We've taken feedback from a lot of cities, including Seattle and Denver, and El Paso as well. So what we look at is how have these cities dealt with the very high demand in like as many as 10, 12 for people need Section 8 for every one voucher is available. So how do you deal with a situation where the demand is so high, but the supply of vouchers can never meet that demand? And the most equitable way to do it, we believe, is a lottery system. Because every person who's in that lottery pot has the same opportunity to receive a voucher. It's not the first person who applies or the last person applies is the least well off along those lines. Every person sort of stands on the same ground.
And will there be a special opportunity for people experiencing homelessness in Albuquerque?
Absolutely. Every year, we lose a number of vouchers just through attrition. People enter the program, but people also leave the program. So the proposal, and I can't stress enough, Brian, that what we're talking about is proposed right now. Until it's voted on and approved and sanctioned by HUD, none of these are set in stone. None of these changes are set in stone. But what we're really looking at is all of the homeless providers who provide transitional housing throughout the city. There will be a preference for people who are in transitional, who were formerly homeless and are in a transitional housing program. There will be a special lottery pool for individuals there, and that will constitute a much better opportunity to receive Section 8. And our goal really is to free up homeless housing beds in transitional programs throughout the city. Let those special agencies that are so good at what they do serve homeless households, and while they can move their people who are graduating from their programs or have been in them into a more permanent Section 8 type of environment.
And it would be a preference in the admissions process. So everyone would have the right to enter the lottery for free. There's no charge to enter our lottery.
There's never a charge.
And then if you're homeless, you would also mark that and say, I'm currently getting served by the homeless program down the road, but it's a time-limited program. I need a place to go. And then you'll have two opportunities.
Absolutely. Everybody who applies to the lottery is in the general lottery pool. Then there will be a separate pool of 150 designated vouchers per year for people who are formerly homeless and presently in a transitional living program.
And the reason we're able to do that now is because we are reviewing both policies. Both the ACOP and the administrative plan are under review, and what we're doing to review that is we're taking best practices, but we're also taking, there's national trainers that have these policies already out there. So we're going through the policy each and every chapter, and we're reviewing what our needs are in the city of Albuquerque with what the national policies are. And there's a reference to HUD in all the policies. It goes back to the rules, basically the policy, and the federal government rules. And so the ACOP, basically, or the continued occupancy policy, which governs public housing, is going to have some changes, but there's been a number of changes that in the last year of the previous presidential administration, they made a lot of changes. And those changes came down, started in April, then in June, and then in October.
These are
And
national changes
these
adopted
are-
by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development that apply to all public housing authorities at the local level.
That's exactly right. And in our current, our occupancy policy in its current state has been kind of copied and pasted over the years. We're going to something that's going to have everything administratively lined up, so it's easy to read. It's got a listing of where that rule comes from and what federal policy it is. And then it's got our federal or our local preferences that we want to do.
And each housing authority has some local options it can choose under the federal guidelines, is that correct?
Correct. And the one thing about public housing versus other housing programs out there is we don't have a big book like the other housing programs do. We have the opportunity to pick and choose some of our local preferences and the things that the areas that we want to focus on. So we're able to do that. And we're able to do that within this policy because it's all lined up with HUD guidelines. It's clear, it's concise. You can go and you can see what HUD wants, and then we can throw in our local preferences to what the needs of the community are. And that's the important thing is really meeting the needs of the community.
And so we're talking about the admissions and continued occupancy policy, so this would decide who gets admitted to public housing and who's able to renew their lease every year in public housing. And are we looking to adopt some of the streamlined ideas to operate better, faster, cheaper?
Yes and no. Some of the streamlined ideas are frankly good on a federal level, but they're really not good on a local level. And I'll give you an example. In public housing, one of the streamlined ideas is to go and inspect the apartment every other year or every 2 years.
How often do we go right now?
Right now we go annually because it's a HUD requirement annually. I feel like we need to go at least every 6 months, if not sooner, because what happens is there's normal wear and tear that occur in the apartments. There's things that break that we want to fix. We think everybody should have a clean, decent, safe place to live.
It's
And
better to
so-
find a water leak early than to wait for it to develop into a
Absolutely.
thing that causes it leaking down through the whole building.
Absolutely, and we do what we call health and safety inspections. And we go in and that's what we're looking for. We're making sure the extinguishers are working. We're making sure the smoke detectors are working. We're looking for water leaks. We're checking all the major apparatuses in that apartment. If they're not working, we want to fix them. We want to, here again, we want to make sure that everybody has the right to live in a good apartment, and that's what we want to make sure of. We're also inspected by HUD on an annual basis, sometimes on every other couple of years. And when those inspections occur, we want to be ready. We have standards we have to meet. We want to make sure we're meeting those standards. So.
And what is a change to streamline the agency that we do like, that we'll make at the local level?
I think some of the changes that we do like are going to be in terms of qualifying a senior and disabled to have a fixed income.
If you're just getting
So,
Social Security and it doesn't change,
Do you have a fixed income? It changes it's a very minute change. We're not going to go in and do a re-examine or recertification every year because really that change doesn't make any difference. It's a real administrative burden. You know, if you're receiving $750 in Social Security and the federal government says that we're going to give you an increase, it's normally $1 or $2. It doesn't make a difference in your rent. And so we have that ability now to streamline that to say, okay, we've got the information, we know what it went up. As long as you have no changes, we can go ahead and do that recertification without them coming into the office. So there are some positive ones for the tenants that we will implement.
and that would make life a lot easier for our tenants that are elderly or disabled. They don't drive anymore, they didn't have a car when they came to the program, and it's a great burden for them to take 3 buses across town just to tell us that they still have Social Security and their income hasn't changed.
And we can do that, and that's what we're doing, and that's what's going to be part of the new ACOP. One of the other things, and I'm glad you brought that up, that we are doing too, is we're looking at having more offices on sites and at our regions and our different areas. Right now, we've probably got 6 offices that are open that we operate out of. We're looking at opening 2 more so that all our regions are covered, and so that the resident doesn't have to travel as far. We looked at one of our properties, and to get to our office, it actually took 80 minutes on the bus, and that's one way. We feel like we can better manage a property from the property, and it's better customer service to be at the property so that we can meet our tenants right there. If they have an issue, they can come talk to us. If we have to do a recertification of their income changes, we're right there. They don't have to drive a long distance to get there. So,
And it's easier for us to keep an eye on the property to prevent crime and other bad things from happening if management goes to visit at least once a week and notices that car that has the flat tire or notices the light that's burned out in the parking
well,
lot.
and it's all in terms of property management. I mean, when you live in an apartment complex right now, you always have your management office there, your maintenance station there, and everything. It's a one-stop shop.
That's for a
basically.
private account.
On a private account. That's how all the other apartment complexes operate. And HUD put a mandate out 10 years ago. They wanted us to operate like that. So we're working on that right now. We're in the process. We've got 6 offices that are staffed, and it's made a difference. When they see the housing specialist on the property, then they can talk to them. And it really has made a difference in terms of managing the property. If you see, you can see burned out lights, you can see things that we need to fix on a quicker basis. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure we're taking care of the properties.
It's easier to do proactive lease enforcement when you're there every week.
Yes, it is. And it's easier to have a discussion with someone and to let them know, here's what your lease says and here's how we need to enforce it. So it's also easier because you get to know your tenants. And when you get to know your tenants, you can service them better. And they're comfortable coming and talking to you.
And speaking of changes in 2017 and better service, have more staff been hired to help provide better service?
Yeah, right now we are fully staffed, probably for the first time, at least since I've been there, and I've been there 3 years. I don't know what the staffing was prior to that. But in the public housing for the housing specialists, we are fully staffed. And we are in the middle of implementing, we have 6 offices that we're using right now on a part-time basis that our staff is actually meeting the tenant out there to do their paperwork, their re-exam, whatever we have to do to get them taken care of. So eventually in the future, we'd like to be able to collect rent at the properties. We're not there yet. We're hoping within the year we can do that at select sites, and we'll move forward with that. So.
And presently, rent payments are submitted by check or money order only, correct? We've gone cashless?
Correct, yes. There was a time when they were taking cash at the Housing Authority, but now everything is we've come to the 21st century because banking the technology is so far advanced now. All you have to do, you check money order, we scan it, it's in the bank. We don't even have to make a deposit anymore and go to the bank. So we feel like we're making these advances based on the technology that's out there, and we want to further those out to the properties. Here again, it lightens the burden on a tenant having to drive somewhere to pay the rent. And as always, they can mail their rent, or they can do direct deposit with us. So if there's any tenants that want the rent to go directly out of their account into our account, that's also available to them.
And many of our tenants receive their Social Security by direct deposit already, so they can sign up to have the rent withdrawn a few days after they have their Social Security deposited. And
many of them do that right now. Many of them do that because it takes the burden off of them having to remember to pay it. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of we're changing. We're already moving in those directions. We've already done some of the changes, but going forward, we're going to have more changes coming up.
Now, Andrew, speaking of all these proposed changes, how can the public offer comments on these proposals to let the Housing Authority know if they agree with them or they'd propose other modifications?
Well, all proposed changes and all the policies and procedures, as well as other documentation, will be available on our website for public comment. And you'll be able to submit public comment through a variety of mediums, written, email, or you can come to one of our public meetings. There'll be a schedule of meetings posted online for public meetings throughout our public housing complexes in community centers, community areas, and community rooms along those lines. So there'll be numerous opportunities to provide comment. Comment can happen in person, or it can happen in writing or email as well. And it's important that no matter what your opinion is, if you feel compelled to make comment or to provide an observation or a suggestion on how we can do things better, it's important to let us know. If there's something we missed, we'd like to hear from it. If there's a need that's going unaddressed throughout the community, then we'd like to hear about that as well. If a change has a negative impact on you, or even if it has a positive impact, you're excited about it, please let us know. It's public comment and public feedback is a way we hear from the members in the community about how our policies and how we work impact the city of Albuquerque.
We'll have that opportunity to make the public comment coming up here real soon. Watch our website so that when these plans hit the website, you can read them and come and make public comment. I think the other thing that Andrew mentioned in there was just the general public letting us know if they see something in our properties. We have a property downtown that we occasionally have problems with transients. So we have neighborhood associations that call us or email us and let us know, and we go take care of the issues. It's important we work with the community, and we have that open dialogue with a number of our different communities within Albuquerque, that when they have issues, they call us, and we go out and we take care of them. That goes back to us getting on site, but we can't be on each and every site because they're too small to staff somebody. So when we get assistance from the public, that's critical and important to us. You can tell them about our hotline that we have, as well as our website that they can get on and get that information over to us.
For example, if someone wanted to report possible fraud occurring in a public housing unit or a housing choice voucher unit, possibly an unauthorized resident who's not on the lease living there, they could report it through our website, through our Report It feature, or they could call our hotline that's listed on the website to make an anonymous tip saying, we think this extra person's living in this unit that's not on the lease and there's problems, please investigate.
Absolutely, and we investigate each and every one. We look into them. Sometimes we'll get those, and it won't be our property, or it won't be a voucher that we administer, so we can't do anything about them. But we do look into them. We do have our resources, and we investigate them. We're in this community. We're a part of this community, and it takes all of us in this community to maintain each and every property, not only that we have, but other owners and landlords have. And I know when I was a property manager at other properties, worked for other companies, I appreciated getting feedback from the community because it made me a better property manager, and it'll make us a better agency when we get that feedback.
And now, Andrew, one of the things we've heard from the community is that they're very concerned about homeless veterans living on the streets of Albuquerque. Please tell us, what is the VASH program, and how are we part of the solution to homelessness?
Well, the VASH program is a special voucher program created by HUD to specifically partner with the Veterans Administration and serve homeless veterans. So the Housing Authority receives a number of referrals for homeless veterans through the VA. We then collaborate with VA staff to give these households a voucher and basically take them off the streets, stabilize their housing. And we've been able to serve well over 200 veteran households that would be homeless if it wasn't for these vouchers. And because they're housed now, they're able to receive that essential care that they need. Whether it's mental health issues, they're able to get the doctor's appointments, they're supervised by a caseworker who keeps track of any concerns they have, make sure they get the essential care they need, and to the appointments they need to get to be healthy and self-sufficient members of our community.
It's the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program, VASH. That's why it's called a VASH voucher, right?
That's correct.
And it's a rental assistance program that's tied in with supportive health care to help people be successful.
Absolutely. It's a voucher program, but it's a designated voucher program for the homeless veteran population by HUD.
And that's also, so HUD is at the table with us on that, but the Veterans Administration is also at the table with us on that. So there's a lot of players that come together for this particular voucher. And that's one thing that shows that we can be in the community, we can all work together, because that's been a successful program. And hopefully we get more funding from HUD to get more vouchers that we can put into that VASH program. But there's a lot of people, not only us, but it takes a lot of different partnerships and organizations to make that happen.
And so if people want to know more about Albuquerque Housing Authority, they should visit our website, abqha.org, to learn about how to apply for programs, apply for employment, learn how to become a Housing Choice Voucher landlord, and learn more about our classes, right?
Absolutely. The website is our hub of information. There are a number of ways. That's the best way to keep in contact. If something important is going to be happening at the Housing Authority, you'll most often see it on the front page. If you're a social media user, you have an opportunity to subscribe to our social media accounts and all of our announcements, and whether or not we're taking applications or accepting applications for a proposed lottery, items out for public comment, items that are out for procurement that we're taking bids on along those lines. If you're a contractor or a vendor who might want to do business with the Housing Authority, there are numerous choices and options, but the central hub of information is by far our website.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Albuquerque Housing Authority Update.